Hello everyone, and welcome to a brand new map expansion speculation video. Today, I'm going to be talking about all the parts of Fontaine that we know about, but aren't able to access just yet. I'll also be mentioning a few other areas that may be released within the 4.x updates, such as Chenyu Vale and Liyue. Also, this video does include spoilers for the Fontaine Archon quests, so if you haven't played through those, I recommend doing that first. With all that said though, let's get right into the video. Even though version 4.1 is still a few weeks away, we actually have some official information about what new areas we'll be able to explore. In the version 4.0 special program, we were shown footage of the currently unreleased Fontaine Research Institute, specifically the cubes of water in the sky. While this footage plays, there's a note on the bottom right corner of the screen that says version 4.1 content. Additionally, we can catch a glimpse of two different statues of the Seven, meaning version 4.1 will have at least two new areas to the north of what we currently have in game. The first of these areas would obviously include the Fontaine Research Institute, with the statue of the Seven being located within the ruins. If you didn't know, the Fontaine Research Institute was recently rocked by a massive explosion, causing it to be blasted up into the sky, forming the water cubes we see now. The explosion was the result of an experiment run by senior technician Edwin Eastinghouse, who was working to solve Fontaine's energy crisis. Obviously, the experiment went very wrong, and the effects were even felt outside of the Institute. The Callus line, which ran the aquabus to the Institute, was shut down as a result of the Institute and the path that it ran on being destroyed. Now, the Institute is slowly being reconstructed, with the leads of the project being Raimondo and Mr. Choizel. According to Augustus Lovelace, however, the spirit of research at the Institute has been in freefall since those two took over. Perhaps we'll get a World Quest series revolving around the Institute, and more specifically, the reconstruction efforts. Moving on from the Institute though, I believe the second of the new areas in 4.1 could include the Fortress of Meropide. This is a massive prison in Fontaine, and according to Thurl, it is located underwater. From what we can see in the game now, there is a huge lake to the north of Fontaine with a tower on each side. These towers could act as entrances to the prison, with each of them housing elevators that get you below the lake. The other statue of the Seven, shown in the version 4.0 special program, is also located in front of this massive lake. With the prison's administrator, Risley, also releasing in 4.1, it would make sense for this area to release alongside him. At the end of the second act of Fontaine's Archon quests, Child was also arrested and sent to the Fortress of Meropide, so it is likely that the story will eventually take us here. Moving on from these two areas though, I'd like to talk about other parts of Fontaine that we could see in other future versions. First up, we have Mont Essus. This towering mountain is located to the northwest of what we can currently explore in Fontaine, and it is by far the tallest point in the nation. Originally, I thought that this area would be added in version 4.1, alongside the other areas that I've mentioned, but upon closer inspection, I don't believe that will be the case. You see, when you look out at the Fontaine Research Institute and the towers by the lake, you can see detailed paths and even tiny ruins and other structures scattered throughout the landscape. However, when looking at Mont Essus, you don't see any paths beyond the playable area. To me, it doesn't seem like this area will come out in version 4.1, but it may be released later on in the version 4.x updates. Now then, I'd like to move on to the east side of Fontaine and talk about what we can see over there. To begin, we have the giant tower that can be seen on a small island in a lake. Wind can be seen slowly swirling around this tower, and the ground below it is more yellowish in color compared to the lush green of the surrounding lands. Beyond this, not much is known about the tower, but we can still speculate. In my Landmarks and Locations of Fontaine video, I discussed my ideas about Genshin's equivalent of the Eiffel Tower. I believe that this tower could be similar to what I speculated, with it being used to communicate with Celestia. While Celestia is not moored above Fontaine at the moment and is instead closer to Chen Yu Vale, it could have been moored above this tower at some point in the past. Alternatively, this tower may have been built to suppress the effects of a divine nail. So far, every single nation that we've been to has had a divine nail somewhere within it. The Skyfrost nail on Dragonspine, the Spirit Stone in the Chasm, the Unseen nail around Surmi Island, and the Hadramaveth nail within Mount Damavand. The divine nail of Fontaine could be within or underneath the tower, which would also explain the swirling winds and the yellowish ground. The almost circular shape of the lake also resembles a crater filled with water, which further hints that a divine nail could have fallen here long before the tower was built. Anyways, there's still quite a bit to talk about with the east side of Fontaine. Augustus Lovelace mentioned another harbor in Fontaine known as Lumidos Harbor, which is likely over in the east. In fact, you can see a structure that hangs on the edge of the Fontaine Plateau, similar to the already released Rome Maritime Harbor. Another place that has been mentioned before is Petrichor, which I believe is also out east. In the area between the Fontaine Research Institute and Lumidos Harbor, there are a good amount of mountains and rolling fields. Within this area, we may be able to find Petrichor, a calm and quiet town amidst mountains and waterfalls. There is a path leading south from the Fountain of Lucine that soon turns east, and this may very well be the path to both Petrichor and Lumidos Harbor. As for when these areas will be released, I think either version 4.2 or 4.3 would work well for them. There are still a few other areas that I think will come later in the version 4.x updates, so let's move right on to those. To start off this final section, I'd like to talk about Chen Yu Vale. This area has been mentioned multiple times in recent updates, and we even got a sneak peek of the area during Baiju's story quest. Now, I've talked about this area a lot in many videos, so I'll just do a brief summary of what we know here. Chen Yu Vale is located to the northwest of the currently explorable areas of Liyue, putting it at the border with Fontaine. It houses a few points of interest that we've heard about as well, including Chaoying Village and Yilong Wharf. These areas are known for their tea, as well as the beautiful jade ornaments that are made there. As for when this area will be released, I think that version 4.4 would be the perfect time to introduce it to the game. The 2024 Lantern Rite will be happening during this update, and as a part of Liyue, Chen Yu Vale would fit with the festive theme. Adding this area during this update would also close the massive gap between Liyue and Fontaine, making the map look more complete. Now, Chen Yu Vale isn't the only area that is located in this unexplorable area. Back in version 3.8, Augustus Lovelace mentioned a place known as Baida Harbor, located to the north of Sumeru's rainforests. This harbor is located in Sumeru, and acts as a connecting point between Sumeru and Fontaine. Given that Baida Harbor is such a small area, we could see it in version 4.4 alongside Chen Yu Vale, fully closing that gap. If it isn't added then, there would just be a hole in the map between Fontaine, Chen Yu Vale, and Sumeru, and that wouldn't look too good. Anyways, there is still one more area that I'd like to talk about. This final area is none other than Mondstadt's Dornman Port. Like Chen Yu Vale, I've talked about Dornman Port in its own video, so I recommend you check that out. Now, I have previously speculated that Dornman Port would be to the north of Mondstadt, but it could instead be within the empty space between Fontaine and the rest of Teyvat. If it were here, each of the nations that we've explored so far, besides Inazuma, would have a port in this massive space of water. Now, Old Mondstadt is kind of in the way of a direct path from Mondstadt City to Dornman Port, so perhaps there's a path to the north that eventually curves to the west to reach the port. Whatever the case, I think that this area could be released around version 4.6, if it ends up releasing in the version 4.x updates, that is. Mondstadt hasn't seen an expansion since Dragonspine in version 1.2, so I would love it if Dornman Port and some other areas were added in the near future. Anyways, that's pretty much it for my speculations on the map expansions of the version 4.x updates. These types of videos are always my favorite to do, so I really hope you guys enjoy them as well. If you want to see more like this, I recommend my videos on Dornman Port, Chenyu Vale, and Fontaine itself. Also, I'll be doing videos on Fontaine lore very soon, I just need to do some more quests. I'd love to hear what ideas you have for future expansions in the comments below as well. Anyways, that's it for this video, thank you so much for watching. Sources and further readings are also in the description if you want to check them out. I hope you all have an amazing day, and I'll see you all in the next video.